Hi everyone, welcome to the exciting world of franchise. And I am Jolene, the head of partnerships of the Fit Summit. Together with me on this panel, we have great speakers, and we have three that have growing franchises in this region and beyond. The first one, we have Cameron Falloon, founder and co-CEO of BodyFit Training, BFT. We also have Michael Jordan, founder and CEO of 12 Round and U-Box Training. We have Chris Caldwell, CEO APAC of Live Brands, so Snap 24 Fitness and 9 Rounds. We then have a franchise consultant with us here, Shen, and she is CEO and founder of Astreem Consulting. So we have amazing questions to get their insights on, and I cannot wait to get started. So sit back, relax, and let's go.
In a gym environment, you're always on the move and there's lots of things that you have to think about. So using Gear Lock, you don't have to worry that your equipment is protected.
So we're able to just go out there and play the sport we love without having to worry about germs.
With, COVID and the pandemic happening, I am much more aware of germs and being safe within the basketball community.
In lots of gyms, there's a lot of large mats and surface areas. So it's great that Gear Lock has a pump where you can spray really quickly, really easily.
Put a few pumps on the ball and just rub it in and wait for it to dry. Nice and easy.
You only have to apply it every 12 hours. It just makes all the protocols so much more simple.
It's super reassuring that all my equipment is protected, so I 110% recommend Gear Lock.
Okay, so let's just dive into the first question, and we would love to know what challenges franchise businesses are facing these days, and are there any that are lurking over the horizon? Maybe we can have Cam from BFT to share first.
Thanks, Jolene. There's several challenges. Firstly, with sites reopening around the world off the back of COVID, it's the various restrictions that are playing out in different jurisdictions around the world. So Singapore is a great example that has much tighter restrictions than, for example, what we're experiencing in Victoria. In Western Australia, it's different again to what we're experiencing in Victoria. And then that's different again in New Zealand and the USA. So for franchise groups, I think it's actually staying on top of all of those policies. That's almost a full-time job, potentially more than, to make sure that the service offerings that we're providing are, one, in line with what those various government restrictions and policies are, but two, that they're implemented correctly, and that our staff and franchisees and their staff are 100% aware of it and confident and understand them, and then implement those so that our members are exercising in a safe environment that gives them confidence to come back. Because I think consumer confidence is another area and difficulty that we're facing. People who are been exposed to home training, lots of online platforms, and they're great things. People have been exposed to various different product offerings. Is getting them back in a studio or in a gym and having confidence that they can exercise safely. Sadly, in Melbourne in particular, there's been a lot of misinformation around the hygiene standards and safety standards and so on in gyms, and we are constantly fighting that with the local governments. And then thirdly, the other challenge we're facing is just supply chain issues. There's a shortage. The retail verticals have gone crazy around the world because people want dumbbells and rowers at home, etc. And there's just a mass supply chain issue around the world, and we're fighting that at the moment. So they're the three things BodyFit Training is struggling with at the minute.
Thank you, Cam. I would usher in Michael, 12 Rounds and U-Box.
Thanks, John. I guess to Cam's point, first of all, it's not a one set business at the moment. It's a bit like running multiple separate models at the same time, depending on the COVID restrictions in the country. So you've got to be across the updates as they come through very quickly, because things can change very quickly. And I think we're as a fitness industry better prepared to go through these snap lockdowns, both as franchisor, franchisees, and even for members. But it's still very disruptive. And I think there's, I guess, a part of coming into 2021, some degree of optimism of, right, we're going to have smooth sailing, coming into this year out of the woods. And then as we've seen across the various regions, we've had these snap lockdowns, which, by all means have been effective in doing the job in reducing clusters, but it's still disruptive on all levels. And for the franchisees, it's the energy that's required to, seamlessly transition into the hybrid at-home training model and then do your mini relaunch back into the club. And also understanding it's disrupted for members and trainers. And I guess that's an ongoing challenge because we've got to remember that members have their own life outside of the gym. We'd love to think the gym is their life, and some it is, but the ability to service them in their hybrid environment where they're potentially dealing with, things that are not normal in their life, whether it's their business or homeschooling or various models, and it's being able to address that as seamless as possible as a fitness provider during this transition period as we come out of the worst of it, and I guess sustaining the enthusiasm and energy, because one thing's for sure, we haven't come out of this lockdown into a less competitive market. It's still extremely competitive, so when you're back in the club, you've still got to absolutely be on your game as a franchisee and for us as a franchisor.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. About the competitiveness of the market, that's our next question. So before we get to that, I would love Chris, Snap Fitness, 9 Rounds. Could you share more about the challenges you're facing?
Thanks, Joanne. Well, the great irony of what we're faced with at the moment is that the whole notion of a franchise business is consistency and a system, and yet here we are, we've got very different situations in every state across Australia and New Zealand. We obviously look after master franchisees throughout Asia as well. So we have a number of different, I think Michael touched on it, there's a number of different sort of scenarios that we're trying to plan and prepare for, which can change, at the drop of a hat. And that's why I love working in franchising. It certainly keeps you on your toes. I've been lucky enough to work in franchising for 20 years now, and I love it. I love the unpredictability of it. So working through that sort of backdrop as we go into the next couple of years is just something that that in franchising always pops up. And franchising for me is, from a business perspective, the ultimate team sport. You have a multiple number of different players on your team, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses, and bringing everyone together to be flexible and nimble enough to still try and deliver a consistent system when you have very different government regulations in different states and different areas of the globe is our obvious challenge moving forward. But it's something that, we love it. Everyone on this panel loves it, and we do it every day, and we wouldn't be doing it if we didn't still love it. So that's probably the biggest challenge, trying to manage a consistent franchise system in an inconsistent regulatory environment.
A great summary point there, how to build such a consistent business in such inconsistent time. I think it's a great summary. I would move on to our next question, which is how can franchises remain highly competitive in today's market to both franchisees and the consumers? Maybe I'll bring in Sian. She's a franchise consultant. I think she would have great insights on this question.
Well, to the point of Chris, franchising is absolutely about consistency and replicability. And when you have so many external forces that's out of your control, it does make it a little bit more complicated. But what I guess as franchisors we can do is control the areas we can control. And that is about building our own know-how, our training programs, the replicability of what is within our control better, and put more focus on giving the guidelines from a more macro perspective as well. And the other thing that adds to the situation for franchisors is that the markets have changed dramatically, and understanding that markets have become even more segmented. And the focus is on targeted micro segmenting. And the fact that there are many countries, especially in Southeast Asia, that are vast, and they are not able to transition so easily from physical locations to online models, those are all things that we need to be well aware of. But then, on the other hand, the fact that there has been the most record-breaking numbers of download of fitness apps, we do think that brands in the fitness industry have actually put a lot of effort in trying to communicate what they have as a brand towards fitting what's happening in the local market in different countries. And we do think that investing and understanding how the customers are consuming their services and adjusting to it, whether it's through apps, through more bite-sized programs, live sessions, streaming, etc. These are all the different models that fit different markets. And again, we need to strive to find consistency within the inconsistent and situations that happen across the region that are out of our control. And also with restricted travel, franchisors should also focus on fine-tuning their franchise systems, double up on developing their proprietary training, and also if in the past we could only rely on physical training, today remote training and finding a balance with EdTech becomes necessary so that that consistency can be communicated across all the franchisees in the different regions that the franchisors might be in.
Great, sounds good. How about actual experience from our franchisor? So I would like to bring in Cam from BFT. What do you think, are your thoughts on this question?
I think the key thing is there's so much learning that's happened in the last 12 months, and there's no doubt, I'm sure everyone on the call and others that are listening would have gone back at the start of the shutdowns in the various regions around the world and really pulled your business apart. There's probably two key things that we looked at. One was what's the opportunity? Where do we need to really be adaptable and to the circumstances that are presenting with things like remote training, not being able to do things in person, hiring staff internationally as an example, which is a real challenge. How do we support people in different regions around the world that for us as a growing brand, we were really looking to start to implement and be on the ground, and all of a sudden we couldn't be on the ground because of travel. So we put a lot of time and energy into understanding how can we overcome those situations and turn, I guess, what was a perceived issue, problem, or a negative into a positive and make it a strength of our business. And then the other was to look at all the projects that we had that we never had enough time to do. So where do we still want to differentiate our business in the marketplace? Where were the gaps? Where were all the projects that we had on the table we just never had enough time to get to? Let's actually really work hard to resource those. And we actually doubled our staff through COVID last year. We identified that with so many things that we felt that we could improve and get ahead on. So we took the risk and doubled our head office staff to invest in those areas, knowing that we were going to come out of this at some stage. If you look at history around the world with all the various pandemics and so on, they all end at some point in time. And it was just a matter of could we survive this, come out strong and be better prepared in the marketplace going forward. But more importantly, just be really clear on body fit training and where we were in the marketplace and strengthening that position because it is a really competitive landscape. And as Michael said, the competition hasn't dropped off, and that's a really good thing. And I think that made us think a lot clearer and a lot more focused, I guess, on what BFT is and making sure that we stayed true to where we thought our niche in the market was and where our competitive advantages were. And that's the areas that we focused on.
Thank you, Cam. We'd like to also bring in Chris for this question. It's a global franchisor and with different countries that you're managing, so how are you ensuring that you remain competitive when the franchise market is growing to be more and more competitive?
Yeah, the franchising always performs exceptionally well when economies are struggling and employment is more of a challenge than it usually is. And from our perspective, and no secret, the other members of this panel, we all compete against each other for franchisees, and we're all in the market. I'm sure all of our franchisees that we bring on board have all looked at each other's businesses as part of their due diligence, or I certainly hope they have. And so I guess our approach coming out of COVID, and this is sort of my approach to any franchise brand, is we don't discount our franchise fees. We stand very strongly behind our brands and what we offer and the support that we bring. So, we've come into this by saying, this period of time, by saying we're not going to discount our franchise fees, and a lot do, and that's completely fine. I get that, but we're sort of in this for the long run. Our focus is very much on driving unit level economics in our existing businesses. And as long as our focus is on, as long as the performance of our existing businesses continues to improve, then the franchise fee becomes more and more valued. And there's certainly incoming franchisees can see the value in that fee if they can see the unit level economics of each business are performing strongly. So that's been our approach in terms of how we strengthen the franchisor and our relationship with our franchisees. Now, with our existing franchisees, I'll say that I like to keep what we call a positive tension between the franchisor and the franchisee. So we keep that level of communication about how do we improve the business, and we continually challenge each other to improve the business, but we do it in a very positive way to create a tension of constant and never-ending improvement. So that's our focus.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, a little segue of the next question is, how has COVID changed your investment or growth plans in the short, medium, and long term? Like we mentioned about inconsistent times and just a lot of turbulence, but would love to know how this time has changed your growth plans, or how do you have to plan for it? So I'd like to bring in Michael to share first.
Thanks, Jolene. Yeah, listen, the last year was going to be a big year of international expansion for 12 Round and U-Box. We'd already launched in New Zealand and Singapore, and we had our first team set up ready to go in the UK. Now, when that sort of occurred, everything occurred in March, we put the brakes on the UK, and since then we've just focused on building this Southeast Asia region. I guess we're fortunate if you look at the scheme of where our clubs are currently on a worldwide level. It's it certainly hasn't been easy, but it's been some of the better COVID environments or situations compared to a lot of the Northern Hemisphere. So it's just sort of focused on where the biggest opportunities for growth are for the short term, which again for us is Australia, New Zealand and parts of Southeast Asia. And then strategically timing the launch in Europe and America with two main things. One is ensuring you've got the right people. With limited travel, you rely more on the people that you have on the ground over there to do the job properly, and certainly launching in those big markets, you want to do it right. And then secondly, timing. We've everyone's had a few false starts with launches over the last 6 to 12 months, and there's opportunity in the real estate market in a lot of countries to come in and get really good leases given the environment, but making sure you've got a game plan and enough capital, both as a franchisor and a franchisee, to get through this next 12 to 18 months period, given that it's not going to be, normal time still for some time now.
Yeah, 100%. I would also love to hear from Xian. What do you think, is it a good time for franchisers to speed up their international development and expansion?
So I represent new brands, new franchisors that are entering the market. So the perspective is slightly different. But what I would say is that as of the last 6 months, we've seen a huge increase in franchisees looking for opportunities, and the amount of increased awareness on health and fitness franchises has grown tremendously. So whilst in the past, say, go back 8 years ago, there would have been very, very few franchisees seeking franchises in this segment. Of the last 6 months, we've had, I would say, an overwhelming number of requests by franchisees seeking to look into investing in fitness franchises. In fact, some brands like the Gym Pod, which is like a 24-hour self-service container kind of fitness program, actually launched their franchise just last month. And I would say that new brands are coming out into the market, despite the fact that we've just come through a very harrowing period of the pandemic. People are willing to invest in a different way of life, and a lot of people who have had maybe been forced to change their occupations are also looking at investing in a business that they feel confident about. And so, as opposed to food and beverage franchises, if I had to rank where fitness franchises exist in terms of a positive investment initiatives, I would say fitness franchises are ranking pretty high. In fact, I don't think it's ever been higher than currently. So I would say from an investment perspective, for the franchisees, this is really a good time for franchisors to continue marketing and promoting their franchise in different regions, as long as they've got all the the training, the know-how, the capabilities of conveying their best practices. Franchising in the short term currently, I think it's a really, really good time to enter.
Great insights here.
But from a franchisor's perspective, of course, I think that they need to invest in the whole, the franchisee onboarding process, whether they have to do it remotely or it's a physical endeavor. They need to figure out how to cope with the restrictions that are now present in all the different countries, right? But from an investor's perspective, I think it's a buoyant time right now.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear from Cam. What do you think? Do you have more franchisees that are coming in from an investment point of view, or they are just, passionate about the whole fitness and wellness space?
Yeah, that's a good question. We have seen an uplift in the pure investor and the multi-site investor off the back of COVID, and I think that's been reflected historically off the back of the GFC many years ago. Franchising became really popular. People, I guess, are a bit looking at their own life and their income streams and potentially their value within the current working environment in the corporate world that all of a sudden disappeared pretty quickly because, as we all know, it just comes down to the bottom line when these situations occur and there's lots of people getting made redundant, etc. So there's certainly an increase in the amount of people that are looking to maybe take their destiny into their own hands, so to speak, but can really benefit from the support that the franchise networks do provide and the IP and the infrastructure that a franchise provides you. So I think we've definitely seen the multi-site investor increase. We haven't seen any slowing down of owner-operators. It has become a little bit more difficult for them just from a financing perspective in the different regions, given that financing and the banks have really tightened their leasing policies. But in terms of growth for us, I guess it hasn't so much changed our plans to grow. It's just made us focus in different areas of those growth plans. So like Michael, the UK, certainly for us, we had to put a hold onto. The US, we certainly haven't stopped, but we've slowed down for obvious reasons and mainly travel. And it's really difficult. We opened a site in Fort Lauderdale not long ago, and the franchisee had invested in our brand, opened a site, and actually had never met anyone at head office. And it's a really weird experience because we're all invested in the people who invest in our brand, and to have not met someone who's opened up a franchise in your network, it's quite actually a weird experience. So I think what we did was just refocus our attention to the areas that we can control. So that's Southeast Asia, Singapore, New Zealand, and certainly for us, areas of Australia that we knew there were growth opportunities. And so it wasn't so much changing and pivoting our growth plans and where we wanted to be. It was just a slight refocusing. And I think the medium to long-term plans for us are still very much relevant.
Perfect. Thanks, Cam. I want to bring in Chris. You have, from your website, I saw you have 2,500 clubs open or in development in more than 26 countries. Your plans to world domination is going strong. Has COVID changed that in the short, medium, and long term?
Well, I'd like to take credit for those 2,500 locations, Jolene, in the last 9 months that I've been with the business, but I think that might be a bit of a stretch. Look, there's certainly been, there's no doubt our focus has been probably more domestically over the last 9 or 10 months in my time in the business. And by domestic, I mean Australia and New Zealand. Apologies to our New Zealand colleagues if they take offence to that. But that's more of a local market, and it's an existing mature market for us, particularly with our Snap Fitness brand. In terms of the masters that we look after from our Asia Pacific office here, so India was okay until the last probably month or so, and they've been heavily impacted. Japan opened their first club in 2020, their first Snap Fitness club in 2020, and that's certainly been an interesting experience to go through. Like Cam just said, I haven't met the people. We speak regularly via Zoom, of course, and our team here look after them on the ground, all via Zoom. And they're opening their second club in Osaka in June. So it's kind of, it's happening, it's growing, it's moving in the right direction, but it doesn't feel like we would like it to feel what we're used to, where we prefer to be there on the ground, meeting with the people, talking to them, shaking hands, getting that real personal touch that you'd like. Hong Kong's another interesting one for us. It is actually going really, really well, and they just came out of their fourth lockdown a month ago, and now they're opening another club. So, they're certainly going from strength to strength. I think they're opening tomorrow they're opening their 10th club in probably about 28 months of business. So they're doing very well as a master franchisee for Snap Fitness in Hong Kong. So, look, it's very inconsistent in the way that we're approaching individual countries. Just again, what I said earlier, based on how that country is faring in relation to A, its COVID cases, and B, its vaccination programs.
Thank you, Chris. Now, regardless, I think franchise business is here to stay for sure. So how can we future-proof this entire business, entire industry, and also value add to the franchisees? Would love to know what are some of the processes that you put in place. Could be people, could be product, could be processes, to make sure you future-proof yourself so that we are here for the long run. Maybe I can bring in Michael to share first.
Yeah, thanks, Jolene. What was interesting but not surprising was when we first went into lockdown down back in March as an industry, we certainly didn't just cop it. We actually, I think as an industry, were the busiest we've ever been, in the sense of the hyperactivity in development and, progression with some of our models. And that certainly was the case with 12 Round and U-Box over the last 12 months. To Cam's point earlier, it did give that temporary pause on the business to do a reflection of, what the roadmap ahead was and where you are under-resourced, or where some, value opportunities are for building value for the franchisees and customers. And then, I guess, working through the process to get that happening as quickly as possible. And so, to the people, product, process side of things, first of all, it's recruiting the right people, and we've certainly added a lot of experience in the technology side of the business, the marketing and digital and operational support. As I think many businesses, is if you don't have a strong technology arm when we're looking at these hybrid models, you're going to be left behind very quickly. And also just making sure we're looking at it from the three stakeholders. Is it easier and more rewarding for the franchisee? Is it a better experience for the coaches and, of course, the members? So the development of the product, we looked at those while staying in our sort of niche. So we couldn't get sidetracked with what everyone else is doing with the developments we've done to the model, whether it's the in-club bricks and mortar, which is still the primary business, or the out-of-club experience. It's still staying in our lane of, we want to own the space in boxing in our market and provide the most convenient, experience in the boutique space. So, it's a really sort of interesting 12 months, because while there's been a lot of pressure, it's also been exciting on the amount of development that's happened. And then the final piece of that is ensuring we can get that out to our franchisees. And, education and support's been a little bit interesting. You know, we've had some degree of face-to-face support. You've obviously got to have that one-on-one service as well with franchisees can reach out to, and a self-serve component of that as well. So the ability for franchisees and coaches to be able to tap into, you know, our system to get, you know, on-demand education to help them run their business, or as coaches to help improve that. We've found that part of the business has been developed a lot in the last 12 months as well. So, yeah, it's, you know, I think the key is there's no static, you can't stay still at the moment. To future-proof your business, you've just got to keep progressing and moving forward.
I love that. I love you ended off with that summary. Keep moving forward, keep tweaking it. How about Xian? How have you been consulting your businesses, your clients on what measures they should have in place to future-proof their business?
For most of the franchisors, what we've been working a lot on is fine-tuning the way they execute their standard operating procedures even stronger. And then we link that with what we call a triumvirate between the standard operating procedures, training processes, and then the next part, which is the audit of best practices. And we try to encourage our franchisors to look at it from three views. One, which is from the business unit level. One from maybe the master franchisee's perspective of managing all the different units. And finally, another level of audit for best practices from the franchisor to the franchisee's perspective. And of course, how all these practices have been executed today, as opposed to previously where travel was not an issue, has been very much leveraged on a technology platform. And today we are able to communicate SOPs digitally, online, in real time, track whether franchisees are actually doing what they need to do by tracking them digitally. At the same time, conducting trainings and assessments, leveraging that same technology, as well as finding innovative and creative ways to actually help our franchisees learn the best practices of the franchisors, again, leveraging online video training, online audits, as well as live assessments for the franchisees, and for the franchisors to be able to also consult and give them advice on how to improve and where their potential gaps are. So again, it's about the franchisors and franchisees knowing their roles very clearly, and for the franchisors to actually be able to add value by understanding what's happening with the franchisees from a lead statistics perspective, rather than in the past where technology wasn't so widely used and reports came in every 1 month or 3 months periods, where by the time the franchisors found out what was potentially wrong or maybe gaps in the franchisees' operations, it usually is a little bit late. And for actions to be taken after the fact is always a lot harder than if you could anticipate what's going to come out on the horizon. So I feel that a lot of our franchisors, because of the advent of technology, of EdTech, as well as the fact that the pandemic has physically not allowed us to travel into different countries, this has actually helped us to speed up the process of fine-tuning the franchisee onboarding process and getting it into a more precise, process-oriented and systematic fashion. So I think that has helped bring value from the franchisor to the franchisee tremendously.
Thanks, Yen. Okay, so Cam, I recently been to a BFT unit, and the one owned by Holly Mason. Not sure if you know her, but she loves you, so she says hi. So yeah, how are you continuously adding value to your franchisees, and also that would also help future-proof your business with lots more like franchise concepts in the market?
Well, thank you. Yes, I spoke to Holly last week for about an hour. So they're a recently owned studio of ours and doing really well. And a good example, I guess, of a site in Singapore that we can't get to. But we've just recently hired a regional franchise manager in that region who provides on-ground support for us, someone who was actually already in our network, so that was very fortuitous. I think for us, the future-proofing and what we're doing for franchisees, similar to Michael with the three pillars of a franchise network, which is the franchisor, the franchisee and the members, was we actually straight away went out to survey members and franchisees with very specific questions that we could really get some great insights into where were the gaps. So broadly, what we did was staff was obviously obvious. We put more staff on, and I think just the panic that set in with the pandemic and the sheer uncertainty. When we first switched to online and sites were shut down, we actually thought maybe this is an opportunity for us to do more head office, in-house work on the business type activities. But we found that the phone just kept ringing and franchisees needed more support than ever. And that was really, really obvious. And so it was just obvious for us to put more staff on and support franchisees. So we increased our touch points and our regional franchise managers across the country, as well as Singapore, and we're in the process of doing that now in New Zealand as well. So providing them with as much support, and I think through a times of difficulty, and that's when you think about future-proofing your businesses, you can't communicate enough. Having real clear communication, which just I think gives franchisees a level of calmness around, we are here to support you and we've got your back. You're not on your own. So making sure that we were communicating the right information, but also just touching points with franchisees and saying, how are you going? We're all going through difficult times. So I think for us, it was as much about the business, keeping it viable, unit economics, all of those things that we focus on a day-to-day level, but also getting back to the real personal side of the franchise business and just having the discussions and just checking in on people's mental well-being, to be quite honest. Like a lot of people, we invested in tech, and we constantly are looking to evolve that. But more importantly, we identified that franchisees were going off for an application over here and another app over here, and they had too many touch points, and the members as well. So we're working hard on centralising our member experience so that there's one central platform that members go to for their body fit training experience to access a whole range of things, as well as our products that our partners and suppliers provide us with. So that was a really big focus for us. And then internally, we focused with our staff. We had some really, really good meetings with staff to really get feedback and understand from them, from myself and Richard, my business partner, are we delivering on what we promised as I guess, a head office, and get the staff to challenge us. And what we found that through that period, it was that the staff were really invested and appreciative of the investment that we were making back in our head office. So we actually changed our head office goals. We sat as a collective and decided that the various contracts and employment contracts that people had, that we would change so that a part of all their contracts in terms of bonus structures, etc., was all reliant on each other as a collective. So everyone at head office now has a significant proportion of their bonuses that are a collective, because what we realise that whether it's Sophie in the office running the office admin, or Jason running our sales team, or Richard or myself or our tech guys, we actually all need each other to work. We're all as important as each other, and to get through the tough times and I guess future-proof your business, you need everyone on the same on the bus, all driving in the same direction, and having a really clear collective goal. We've actually got four metrics that we're measuring as a group, that at the end of the year we will either all get rewarded together or we won't. But it was really important to get everyone pulling in the same direction, because you can go through tough time, through the challenging times. It's really easy to go, this is too hard, or I'm going to focus on my area, and you start to work in silos. So I think for us, having a collective goal, knowing that if the phone rings and a franchisee wants to speak to me, I'm going to take that call, even though they may be best speaking to someone in operations. It can't hurt for me to have a call and make them feel good about their day just by listening to their story. So that was a really, I think, a good initiative that we did, getting everyone at head office on the same page. And it's not that they weren't on the same page. but now we're really clear that we're in this together. And I think, Chris mentioned earlier that franchising is as close as it gets to being in a team. And I think that solidifying the team and making sure that we all are significant parts of it, there's no one that's more important than anyone else, has been something that we've done that we think will future-proof our business, because everyone's really invested now at all levels of the business.
Perfect. Thanks, Cam. Yeah, I think it is a huge teamwork. And another thing is to steer together as a team to go into digital, virtual, and also hybridization of the business. So would love to hear thoughts on how your view of hybridization, going virtual, has changed throughout 2020, and also has it changed in 2021? I would love to bring in Chris to share first.
Originally, I was going to pass on this question because you're probably thinking more from a product perspective, moving to a hybrid model. But I think, as I've reflected on the question, the way that as a new leader coming into this business, the way that I've approached the business is not the way that I would have liked to have done it, because we had travel restrictions in place and we couldn't get around. So how does a leader come into a business, and keep and develop that relationship and that connection with franchisees that are spread all across the country, all throughout Asia? How do you develop that relationship? So using the hybrid terminology, I do a weekly video report through to all of our franchisees, which is a way of them getting sick of seeing my face. But it was the only option really available at the time. Thankfully, I've learned some new tricks over the last 12 months, and now I've got a way of presenting with a lot more screen and a lot less of my face that enables them to see some key stats. And I think. But the important thing through that has been the focus on what we've talked about. So getting that really consistent language around key metrics, talking about states that are closed. I mean, Victoria was closed for 8 months, so there was no point reporting on that state and how it was performing. But every other state was performing quite well. I'm talking about the domestic market now. So, throughout last year, it was important to give people really regular updates and bring everybody as close together as they possibly could. And then from a hybrid perspective, as soon as the borders were open, we were able to get into the States and go and visit, get on a plane straight away and spend some time face-to-face. And it was a little bit less intrusive because they'd had the regular video updates from me. So it wasn't like I was a new face to the business anymore. And it really, I think it's really helped keep us as close together as possible. I think from a product perspective, probably we relied on fitness on demand as being an opportunity for all of our members across all of our clubs throughout Australia and Asia Pacific. So that was a product we relied on heavily, which already existed not just within our business but within the industry, but it was obviously something we could pick up and leverage. And I mean, there are other things that we've done, and like Cam said, boots on the ground, we 100% did, but we would have done that anyway, COVID or no COVID. We made a decision that we wanted more boots on the ground to drive that unit level economics question that I mentioned earlier. So thanks, Jolene.
Thanks, Chris. I'd like to ask Sien for her tips and advice on her views of going hybrid and going virtual for clients last year and also moving forward this year.
Whilst in the beginning, people would have thought that going digital wasn't an option. Today, it's something that's here to stay. I think in the last Fit Summit, McKinsey presented the fact that the numbers of downloads, like in countries like India, grew by 157%, and in the Middle East, it went up by almost 60%. The question is, post-pandemic, does that stay and does that change? And it does seem like now that we have gone past the initial panic of the pandemic a little, we see that actually a lot of the change that took place about a year ago is actually here to stay. So I would say that the hybrid model needs to be ever present, because now people have learned new habits, right? Apparently it takes 21 days to learn a new habit. And I think that a lot of people still love to go to the physical gyms, but the option of being able to have access to their favorite fitness apps, virtual training, so on and so forth, remains ever evident. And I, for one, as a avid gym goer now actually combine even my favorite apps whilst I'm in the gym, right? So I think that consumers' way of exercising and their views on fitness have changed tremendously. So if you're only a physical gym, I think that affects your competitiveness tremendously. And the fact that now it seems like even people in the fitness industry have presented beautiful hybrid models that can compete for, like a entertainment app as well. People are upping their game constantly. I've seen beautiful productions from all the different fitness companies, and it's so engaging that I think that customers now have gotten to the new high standard of a hybrid model. So for me, I think the hybrid model will remain, and it will just constantly improve in terms of the customer experience. And after all, we're here to serve the customers. So I think that all the fitness companies internationally are really going in the right direction.
Thanks, Yen. Before we move into our last question, I would love to hear some thoughts from Michael from your fitness on demand. Has that changed your view on hybrid and virtual?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because in 2020, virtual and hybrid was a necessity. It was really the only option during lockdown, and as a fitness provider, to keep your members engaged, you needed to come up with a solution very quickly that sort of replicated as much as possible the experience in club and provide the same value and elements that they love without the bricks and mortar stuff that you can't deliver to their home. And then it's and so you needed to do that. And then that has changed in 2021. And I think encouragingly, as we all predicted, the vast majority of people have come back into the club, and very, very few have said, you know what, I prefer to stick to the online program. So where I think the sort of hybrid space is going is not about replacing the bricks and mortar. I think the bricks and mortar will forever be the place to go, and predominantly, because of that social interaction, both from the coaches who provide the programming, support and motivation, but also the social hit which people get, which is so important these days, where there aren't as many spaces to go to do that. But then looking at how it extends the value. So it's not the 3 sessions a week they get in the club, it's the 4th they get, on a Sunday when they're in the park with the family to do an extra session, or when they're on a road trip for work, or those sort of things, or a mini lockdown, you've got a quick solution. But not only the workout, I think the other thing you've got to look at is how members get value from your business. And, we're not just a training provider, we're, I guess, a wellness product. And you think of the other ways that they could get value. The obvious space where apps can provide more value is places like nutrition, mobility, mindset, motivation. And so looking at all those extra hours in the day when they're not in the club and working out ways they can get value and interact with your business, I think that's really exciting, the way that they can get nutrition plans ready to go, or do a quick stretch out mobility session because they're sore from the week. So I think it's extending the value. That's where the hybrid model is going, not a replacement. I don't think virtual will ever replace the bricks and mortar.
Perfect. Thanks, Michael. All right, it's an amazing panel, and I just have one final question where it's a challenge for you guys because you have to answer it in 10 seconds each, 1-sentence answer, which is, what are the key life lessons, could be life, could be business, that the pandemic have taught you? I'm going to bring in Cam first.
Thank you. It's embrace change. In adversity, there is always opportunity, so just stay positive and look at the opportunities.
Chris.
Is today day one or one day? You decide.
Wow. Xian?
I think mental strength and stamina is the key to getting through any challenges. And no matter what, you just need to have a strong sense of purpose, and nothing will stop you.
Indeed. Finally, Michael.
Yeah, as many people have said, control the controllables, stay the course, And I think for us as franchisors to make sure we take our own medicine and, keep fit and healthy in our own lives, because this is certainly a marathon, not a sprint. So we've got to be as high performing as possible and ensure we're looking after ourselves and our team so we can keep putting the effort in.
Take our medicine. The first time I'm hearing this. Yes, it's true. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been an honor, pleasure to be moderating this panel. If you guys want to find out more about their businesses and all their profiles, please check them out. They're all very friendly people. And enjoy the rest of the summit.